So, how do you prepare for the world that's coming? Well, first of all, you created, ladies and gentlemen, you created the world that's coming. This is your creation. You created this to learn the lessons that you need to learn to become the person that you're going to become. And then, once you've become that person, there are going to be more lessons that you need to learn to become the person you're going to become from there. There is no stopping. There is no grand success, and failure is merely a pit stop on the way to success.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Patrick Cook. Welcome to Being. Being is a place where we gather to explore some of life's most difficult questions. What does it mean to lead a meaningful life? What does it mean to live a life of purpose or on purpose? How do we make sense of the world? Really, what we're asking is, what the hell is going on? Today's guest is a force of nature. His commitment to growth and expansion are palpable in his words and his magnanimous energy. As the founder and executive coach at the mentalmasteryalliance.com and host of the podcast of the same name, he leads a network of mindset changemakers seeking to empower clients to be their best self in all aspects of life. His depth of knowledge, experience, and his sense of humor all shine through in this episode. So, without further ado, please welcome Adam R. Walton.
Oh, man. Quite an honor to be here. That was one heck of an intro. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. You're the bomb, dude. So Adam and I met through a mutual friend named Dawn Bates, who you should totally check out. Amazing woman, an author doing incredible things in the world. And Adam actually invited me onto his podcast, which you should totally check out as well, the Mental Mastery Alliance. I'll put all that info in the show notes. But this guy is just a powerhouse. It was a pleasure to drop in with him on his podcast, and it is an even bigger pleasure to have him on my podcast today.
I don't know how you're doing it. Thank you, by the way, again for that. Yeah, I'm really quite content with sort of where we are in the world, where we all are, and that's an interesting point to say, because you can look around and you can see, all sorts of chaos and all sorts of everything, and have a hard time saying, like, look at the positive, or that cliche, look at the positive and that sort of thing. But there is positive. There's positive in absolutely everything. So we're in a time right now where it's transitional, where everything is just not what we wanted, which is where we personally get offended or hurt or whatever it is by this thing going against what we want. But it's not necessarily what the collective out there wants. So, as I say, we're in a really, really interesting time, and I'm so blessed to have been able to see it the way I do, to have found the clarity. And the reason you and I spoke the first time was, of course, on the sobriety thing. It's such a topic, and it's such a realization. It's such an actualization to no longer be a prisoner, not so much of the bottle or of your habits, but of the way you used to think.
Yes.
And when that's why, like, it is fun. It's fun for me to be here. It's fun that you have a show now. It's fun that everything out there has conspired to make everybody start talking. We live in a time now where, maybe you coming on the show is like, you know what, I should do more of those, or I should do my own, So maybe I had a hand in the beginning of being. Maybe I can toot my own horn on that and say, you know what, I had something to do with that, and then be really proud about that.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because you're bang on. You were super inspiring amongst many other people. Like, this is the time more than ever we need to speak our truth, use our voices. And podcasting just seems to be the right medium for me. It's free of censorship so far. We'll see how that goes. But, we need to be having honest conversations with each other, communication, intimacy, like truth, because we live, for me, in a fundamentally broken information ecology. Like, this is a cultural narrative warfare we're in the middle of, right? And so, being a beacon of truth, transmitting truth, or a truthful signal at least, is so important. So yes, that's why I've started this. I want to have honest conversations with guys like you, so we can share the infinite wisdom that you have in a synergistic way between us that hopefully brings value to other people. So that's really what my intention is here.
An interesting note on that too. I had a conversation with an individual not too long ago, and he was talking about mysticism. And he was talking about being a mystic. So on my show, I said, we're going to have a mystic on the show and blah, blah, blah. And I never put any thought into it. I never really thought, what's a mystic? What's this? When you say mystic, you think like fog rolling in and like maybe a gypsy or something like that. But maybe that's racist. And maybe in 2020, we can't say gypsy or fortune teller. I don't know. And that's what's funny about this world. So I've got this guy on. And we're talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I'm explaining to him sort of my views on what I see and what I keep hunting and what I keep searching. And he tells me flat out, he goes, "You're probably one of the most powerful mystics I've ever spoken to." And I'm like, "You're calling me a mystic?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "I'm not a mystic. Like, what the hell's a mystic?" He goes, "Do you not know the definition of mystic?" And I said, "I don't know. Isn't a Van Morrison song Into the Mystic? Isn't that a thing?" And no, he goes, "Look it up." So I did. Actually, I just pulled it up now as I was chatting with you. I said, "A mystic is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect."
Wow.
And then I look at that and I'm like, mother of effing pearl, I am a mystic. Because
Yes, man.
and it's so many of us are, and it's an
Yeah.
interesting term. We don't label ourselves, we don't put this stuff on there, but like mystic again comes with that juju-y term. But it's a funny thing to be like, holy, there's so many people out there doing exactly what you're doing that there is a definition in the dictionary of who you are.
Wow.
And that is a phenomenal thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to this show, which you are because you just heard me ask or state that you were, and those that aren't listening to this show, what are you doing? Come on, get over here. Look up the definition of mystic and see for yourself and see that, the awakening is coming and it's coming in such a quick thing. And it's not an awakening to all the conspiracies. It's not an awakening to all the, noting that the news is fake or fake this or orange man bad or anything that you're seeing. Anything that you're seeing at all on the mainstream media is, even if it looks good, it's still a deception because the real answers are actually inside you and your
Mm.
own personal awareness and the awareness you were born with and the awareness that you need to uncover to get you to where you need to be. And that awareness comes from simple things. Like Patrick, you preach all the time and you're synonymous and famous for on your your online profile for sobriety and for what it means and for how to
Mm.
do it. And you play a little guitar. I like that too. So the this to me is it's a phenomenal time for us to be alive and for us to be able to look inside ourselves and for us to really tap into what it is that makes us tick and the information that we were naturally born with. Remember when we were kids,
Mm.
you're like, you're born with all the answers, right? So mysticism is self-growth, and there's a lot of mystics out there, and you're probably a mystic. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a mystic and you didn't know it. And that's
Mm.
what's cool about that is you can connect with other people who label themselves as mystics and have phenomenal conversations, even if you don't want to put that label on yourself.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I would consider myself a mystic with that definition, like seeking
Mhm.
higher truth beyond the intellect, seeking to synergize, humanity into a sort of oneness. And so I want to come back to what you said about awakening. Like, what does awakening mean to you? Because this is a term that's thrown around, like hashtag woke and all this shit. What does awakening really mean?
That's a good topic. That's a great topic, actually. My favorite definition of awakening is aware. Now, there's an author that I absolutely adore, and that's Jed McKenna, and he has a way of talking about waking up in a comical sense, like a story. It's like he's telling you a story. It's like if you're listening, if when you're reading his books, it's like you're sitting around a fire listening to this guy tell stories. And one of the stories he was talking about is Alice in Wonderland meets Morpheus from The Matrix. And Morpheus offers Alice the red pill or the blue pill. Right. And in the Matrix, they go up one level and they go from the Matrix world to the quote unquote real world. And Alice sits there and listens to his spiel and then says, "You've only gone up one level. You've only awoken to one level." She says, "I've gone through tens of thousands of levels. I've gone to different worlds. I've gone to different galaxies." The idea that you can wake up to one level, and this is where awakening becomes, like I said, anything you see in the mainstream is pretty much bullshit. Even when they talk about awakening, like people think that you go from asleep to awake, and they don't quite fully grasp, what it is that an awakening is. An awakening is becoming aware. And once you start becoming aware, to me, it's like you can wake up to your own bullshit 10 years after you've woken up to your own bullshit. because any sort of story that you tell yourself, and anything that you get yourself locked into, like prime example, sobriety. I'm not over here saying I'm sobriety. I'm a sober champion because I'm not. I don't drink, and I don't actively promote sobriety, although I live that life. It just is one of those things. I love it. I love talking about it. I love talking about the benefits of it. But there are people that are like, I'm in the 12-step program. I'm constantly at the meetings. I'm doing this. Like they go to the meetings. Like I'm 10 years sober. I'm not 10 years sober. I'm not any of these things. I am living my life. I did drink. Now I don't drink. Right. And there's no connection to it. And there's a lot of people that have, that can take issue with that. And that can take issue with, well, this is what works for you. This is what works for me. And this comes back to awakening. Because two people can argue an amazing point. Like you and I, you could be an active. I don't know. Are you a 12-stepper? Are you an active like I am? Do you go to the meetings? Do you tell the people that you're 8 years sober and this, that, and the other thing?
I've never been to an AA meeting.
Okay.
In fact, that's a lot of what I talk about is because when I was in the depths of my alcohol dependency, AA seemed like the only option, and it wasn't an option for me because of the stigma, because of it was akin to admitting failure, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't in my DNA. That wasn't in my character.
So
I didn't see any other options though. So I was like, and it's so pervasive in our culture. I was like, I felt stuck for years and years and years.
So you just talked about 4 stories right there. And 2 of them are, you didn't see any other option other than AA.
Yeah.
But the reality is the option was just don't fucking drink. Don't pick the bottle up. Right? There's your option. Don't pick it up. But you told yourself a story that AA was the only option. And we all tell ourselves that story. We all tell ourselves every story. In every aspect of everything, we tell ourselves a story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to quit smoking? Just quit smoking. I can't quit smoking. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Story. Now, not only do you tell yourself a story when it comes to awakening, when it comes to living your life, because, what's awakening? Awakening is just another perspective. Right?
Mm.
When it comes to awakening, when it comes to quitting smoking, when it comes to quitting drinking, whatever it is, when it comes to making any change in your life, you'll tell yourself a story. And you'll back that story up with other bullshit that you firmly believe to be true because you heard it somewhere. So now, to putting that into perspective, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a smoker, quitting smoking seems hard because there's a lot of money in the smoking industry, in the smoking game. And people are like, well, they don't run ads for smoking anymore. They don't do this, they don't do that. But the smoking they've run, it's so cerebral in so many people. Granted, there are less smokers now. But the smokers that they do have their hands on are still seeing people smoke in movies. They're still seeing gratification cigarettes. And the addiction, quote unquote, the addiction seems so real, but it's inside your head. So it's hard to break from that. Now, smoking is a lucrative business. Secondarily to smoking, the one right after that, the most lucrative business after smoking financially is the quitting smoking business. So they want you to try to quit smoking because they want you to buy the gum. They want you to buy the patch. They want you to buy the, I don't know, Xanax, Xantax, or whatever the fuck it is. They want you to buy this stuff and they want you to be hooked on this stuff and they want you to fail and they want you to go back to cigarettes and they want you to believe in yourself and they want you to do this vicious circle, right?
Mm.
And that's because you inside your head now tell yourself a story about smoking is hard. Quitting smoking is hard. And then I tried the this, I tried the that, I tried the patch, I tried the laser, I tried the na. Right? Did you try not smoking?
I totally agree with you. And it's what the issue is, though, and specifically from my work with my clients, is that even if you have a conscious cognitive awareness that you want to quit smoking, for me, drinking, I knew, intellectually that it was harming me. I knew it was harming my body, my relationships, my finances, everything. But it was so ingrained in my identity, in my culture, in my social network, and most of the motivations were unconscious, right? And so even if I have the conscious awareness that, okay, this is, not helping me, I still have some unconscious desire to pick up the bottle. So unless we do the deeper work, it's more than just a decision. It's the decision, yes, but that's the entry point for me. It's okay, make the decision, say, okay, and this is what I do with my clients. Let's commit to 90 days of abstinence. And in that 90 days, let's do the work. And for me, the work is let's uncover the unconscious. What are the patterns? What are the stories? What are the programs that are running in the background that are influencing your behavior without your knowledge? Right.
Exactly.
And this is what awakening is. This is what becoming aware is. It's like you become aware of your own shit,
Yep.
And I think you said it beautifully. When we're born, we're these perfect, innocent light beings. We're not infiltrated or by the programs and the people around us. But as we grow, in order to learn how to survive in our environment, we take on the patterns, the beliefs, the thinking processes of our parents, of our guardians, whoever it might be, right? And so we get um, infused with this worldview, which isn't ours. And so, as we grow, that worldview stays there and it becomes our shadows and our unconscious, and we operate from it without knowing.
It's that worldview that people want to hate on or be upset about or be like, how come somebody has more than me or this, that, and the other thing. What we also don't understand is like you just basically finished my sentence to what awakening was. Becoming aware of the fact that you've been tricked. Becoming aware of the fact, questioning these things like you just said, I know that I shouldn't be drinking, but it's part of this, it's part of that. What do I do? Right? It's simple. It's so simple. People, when you want to quit the smoking, the drinking, that sort of stuff, you just say, I'm done. Right. And then whenever you smoke, you have to ask yourself why. Whenever something comes up, be aware of it. It takes a minute. Like you said, 90 days is a good window. It's a good window to be like, let's commit to not drinking and let's go. And then at the end of the 90 days, what people don't realize is at the end of the 90 days, you don't want to drink. You're like, why would I, what's the point? And it's the same with the when you wake up. When you wake up, you don't just wake up. You're not like, bing, there it is. I a lot of people equate waking up to, remember the magic eye?
The
That
magic
painting,
eye.
the painting that was a bunch of crap, and then if you stared at it long enough, it became like a sailboat or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So once you see the sailboat, you can't unsee it, right? And,
Right.
and that's the thing, but it takes you forever to see it. So with awakening, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And
Mm.
the only way that it works is, or the easiest way for it to work is just becoming aware of your bullshit, actively looking at the story that you tell yourself, because
Mm.
you will tell yourself a story and you will back that story up until you stop. And this is what somebody told me, and I really like this one. Until you stop living in the answer and start living in the question, you can't fully start living your life.
Mm.
And what that means is you go through life and you see a lot of conversations where people are just trying to express their points and their opinions, and like the conversation isn't a learning conversation. It's a, this, I know that, let's do this and this, you're wrong, I'm right, I'm wrong, you're right. Oh, that makes sense, whatever it is, but it's all factual points. And the reality is nothing is real, right?
Mm.
Nothing, absolutely nothing is fluid. Or sorry, everything is fluid and nothing is rock solid the way we want it to be.
Mm.
So the minute we say to ourselves, I don't know the answer, and the fact that I think I do know the answer is limiting me from finding out other possibilities.
Totally.
Once we can say that, and once we can live in that mindset, that's when things really start to change. It's like, I know this, this, and this. Do you? Do you really?
Mm.
I don't know. Right? But we're so arrogant that we're like, I'm right. But are you right? And if you could have been right 10 minutes ago, but you're wrong now.
Mm. I find we do that it's grasping for a sense of control. Like we're trying to make sense of this world, and we do that by, okay, what can I control? What can I bring into concrete so I can at least have some foundation? Because the uncertainty drives us crazy. And now more than ever, there's so much uncertainty. So people are grasping. That's why you're seeing more polarization across multiple fronts. People are grasping onto some identity, some in-group, some belief system just to have something to hold on to because there's so much uncertainty. And then when we do get in conversation, you're just so ingrained, so entrenched in that idea that anything else seems like a threat. And so we have multiple poles of in-groups of factions that are warring right now, and none of it is in the interest of higher truth. So one of my missions is like, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we show up first in conversations like you and I, like as mystics right now, seeking higher truth, but we come with humility, with question, like if we decide to have this conversation and our goal is to find higher truth, then we can both show up vulnerably and, be able to be wrong, be able to listen to the other person's point, reiterate it to them. And so we have a basis of integrity, of respect, of vulnerability. And from there, we can actually communicate with truth, because we're both seeking the same thing. If we're polarized in our own positions and we're just trying to be right, then there's no opportunity for a higher truth to emerge.
I would 90% agree with that.
Okay.
which puts us on the same page. And here's the 10%, and it's a big 10% though. The 10% is, like you said, we're all polarized, right? You look at sexism, racism, classism, and now maskism. Masks. The only intention of a mask is to make the non-mask wearers fight the mask wearers, and vice versa, right? They don't actually do anything to this virus that may or may not even be real. So when we talk about these things, and when I say may or may not be real, I mean, when you live in the question, like I said, like I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm seeing all this information come at me with regards to the virus and the corona and how it's like shut down the world. And I'm looking at it through the knowledge and the information that I had been given my whole life. What people aren't looking at is the fact that it's crushed the economy. It's killed it. And that seems intentional. And all these fake numbers about corona and people getting sick, they're all coming out now, and now that everybody's they're all wrong. They're all publicly being announced as wrong. So you can say, well, you know what? We screwed up. There was nothing wrong with us after all. And what I mean by that too is you can look into baseball, for example. Prime example. The Miami Marlins had 18 players go down with coronavirus. They took 2 weeks off, and now they're playing double headers to catch up to the rest of the league. They're playing double headers. They took 2 weeks off to get rid of the coronavirus. 18 players diagnosed with coronavirus. 18 players are now back playing baseball, double headers, so 14 to 19 innings a day, and yet we've lost an entire economy. And this is a cognitive dissonance thing. People aren't going to understand or grab onto this. People are like, everyone's dying everywhere of coronavirus. Well, if 18 players are back being extremely physical on the field the next day, what the is a coronavirus? Now, that being said, we can look at that as a point. Somebody could be listening to your podcast and they could say, you don't know what you're talking about. There's doctors everywhere that do this. And there's somebody else could say, well, you know what? I never looked at it that way. And that makes sense too. And like, what's actually going on? And the reality is we're not here to try to convince anybody of anything. We're just here to talk our piece. And where my 10% change in what you said comes from is this. The minute you get to a certain level of enlightenment, you understand that you no longer have to compete with anyone outside of yourself. You never have to have an argument with anybody. You never have to obviously raise your voice or get agitated or get angry or get anything other than more observant. Because anybody out there that's running their mouths about you or on any of your work or on anything that you're doing, like trolls, for example, they are only talking about themselves. They're only shedding the hate in which they live. And they're trying to spread that and share that. And the weird thing is, as a light worker and as somebody who does a lot of motivational work over the past few years, you get some really, really weird hate mail and hate messages come your way. And that's not an individual. That's not one person talking to me. That is polarizing energies of the ethos in which we live. This is the world around us, not Mother Earth, but this is karmic. So I'm going to push on a certain path, and some asshole is going to come at me and be like, nah, right? And the funny thing about that is people are like, well, that's just, it's like, why would that be a thing? And you get some really weird messages, some crazy accusations. Anyone that's done anything in their life, for the most part, you're going to see either a sexual conviction or assault or something like that, or tax problems, or anything that society as a whole deems to be terrible. You're going to see accusations pointed at anyone that's in a position of higher power because they've worked really hard to get there. And the ethos in the universe pushes back. Now, granted, there are some terrible people out there. I mean, we're dealing with a major pandemic with regards to #SaveTheChildren. But there is just this energy. And what this energy comes from, I've found, after the attacks that I've gotten, is every single one of them is something I have to deal with. So the person that attacks me or the person that says what they say, even though they're saying it because of their own insecurity, it's not for me to do anything other than internalize and ingest and wonder why I heard what they said. Why was that directed at me? What did I need to take from this? Not why did they need to say it? Because these people are probably non-player characters in this grand ethos that we're all playing in this giant sandbox called Earth. That was a video game reference, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may have caught that. But the simple fact of the matter is, the more we think we know, and the more it's crazy. The more you clear up your own mind, the more you clear out the ideas, like you said, the world that we were taught, the world that we were raised, the world that we lived in. The more you clear that out, and you get to what you believe to be the root of who you are, the more you realize that you have so many more amazing questions to ask, and so many
Mm.
more amazing things to do, and so many more amazing things to discover. I'll tell you, my levels of awakening have gone pow, 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 and it all started for me on 9/11. I mean, I had questions right
Me
away.
too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I had questions right away. And then the grand awakening for me, like it really came to next kin, was 2012, which,
Mm.
I mean, if you want, I can tell you about how that was the end of the earth, the end of the world as we know it. It's also when CERN found the God particle, was 2012. It's also when the Mandela effect started kicking in. Now, here's a crazy thing with regards to the Mandela effect, and I know you said don't talk about conspiracies, but remember this? Do you remember Jane Goodall?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, how did she die?
I don't know.
Don't you know?
No, I
If
don't.
you really think about it, how did Jane Goodall die? Do you remember what Jane Goodall did?
Yeah, she worked with the orangutans, right? Or the apes,
Mm-hmm. And how
right?
did she
And
die?
communicating. Maybe she was attacked by one. I don't know.
Well, if you can't remember, but yeah, okay.
Oh,
So she that was the story, right? She was attacked by the apes that she worked with, and everybody
okay.
remembers this story for the most part, um, as it goes. But here's the weird thing about that, right? Jane Goodall is actually still alive. She never
Mm.
died, and that was mind blowing to me with regards to these things. So these conspiracies, they can go in any direction that you want them to go in, I suppose. But the more you wake up to these things, and this all stems back to 2012. A lot took place in 2012, and you can even go back in the news articles and the news clippings, and you can see a general consensus. Remember back in the day in the 80s when they had that thing in the library where you scan the newspapers? Picture that
Yeah,
in your
right.
head. Picture that in your head rolling back to 2012. Things changed in 2012. It's almost like we lost our innocence, or we came to a different place, or we're all in a different place. So the awakening is it you? Is it your mindset? What is your mindset? Is it your thoughts? What are your thoughts? The awakening is a reality shift. Did we go somewhere? Did somewhere come here? Where is here? Where are we? What are we doing? Right? All of this, there's so much more to it than I was a drunk. I was a drinker. Now I'm sober. I worked really hard. Now I don't work. I this and now I that. Taxation is this. Do I pay my bills? Do I do this? Do I like all of these rigmarole? Piecemeal day by day, happenstantial things all take place, and all the terrible things that take place and all the boring and monotonous things take place. They all exist to push you into awakening. They all exist to
Mm.
push your barriers. So the
Mm.
minute you've had absolutely enough, and there isn't a single person on this planet that is a mystic that didn't go through absolute hell,
Yeah.
right? So that is your earth shatterer. So the ultra pain that you suffered broke you out of the matrix. And
Mm.
it's hard to get that pain again. So it now comes down to cognitive awareness, because you don't go through the pain that you went through that broke you out of the matrix twice in your life. You learn your lessons from pain. And people out there listening, sorry, I know I've hijacked your entire show, but people out there
That's all
listening
good.
that have these issues, these anxieties, these things that they're worried about, these things that they're afraid about, the things that they think about, the things that keep you up at night. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the things that changed you. So when you think about the things that keep you up at night, and you say to yourself, oh, I wish I hadn't have said that, or I wish I didn't do that, right? These are the things that changed you. So when you address them, they go away, and you walk
Mm.
away with new knowledge, and you walk away a new person, and you walk away more enlightened when you address them inside your head. Ask yourself why I'm worried about that, why I think about that. And to prove that point, every other thing that you don't think about had no effect on you whatsoever and was completely unimportant. So you need to start addressing the things that quote unquote keep you up at night to get yourself to the next level if you're going to inch your way into awakening, as opposed to
Mm.
guys like Patrick and me who shattered our way through like the Kool-Aid man because we had absolutely no choice.
Yeah, you're totally right. There's so many things I want to comment on with that answer. That was amazing. But what we're really talking about, I think, is how do we make sense of reality? How do we make sense of the world? And there's a couple of different levels to this. On an individual level, like there's the individual level of awakening and healing, but there's also the collective of awakening and healing. So when you talk about a collective pain body. That's how Eckhart Tolle describes it. That is still present in our collective. All of the suffering and the atrocities that have happened over time are still in our collective psyche. So there's healing on the grander scale, and there's healing on an individual scale. And the only thing we can do is heal ourselves in order to influence the collective. I also love what you said about things showing up in your life. If you can view everything as happening for me, everything that happens is a lesson. There's learning in everything. And so when you can view life like that, like you said, you're up at night thinking about things. Okay, what is the lesson? What is the message that I'm not hearing here? What is the emotional wound that I haven't healed yet? There are indications of where you need to look in order to heal yourself, in order to grow, in order to awaken. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I wanted to touch on something you said. Eckhart Tolle, I heard you say Tolles. I'm like, I don't know how to, I've always referred to him as Tolle.
Me too, but I heard somebody else say toll the other day, so I don't know what it is. We know who we're talking about.
Yeah, E.T. motherfucker.
E.T. motherfucker.
Perfect. So, and this man's a legend. This man, Eckhart Tolle was one of the first that really got me into asking a
Me
broader
too.
question.
Dude, I read The Power of Now and it just blew my fucking mind.
Yeah. So The Power of Now for me was the second book. But my first book that really woke me, that I sought after, I guess, the initial awakening was I stumbled across Jim Rohn, The Art of Exceptional Living.
I haven't
And
read
he
that.
talks about, you haven't read that one?
No.
Oh, bro, get it. It's like 7 hours. It's the best. It's the exact length. Here's a fun one for you. It's the exact length of the trip from Toronto to Montreal, one drive.
This is a good Canadian reference for you.
There you go.
That's like 4.5, 5 hours, isn't it?
6 hours about. Yeah. So that's that's one of the books that I've heard time and time again because I just played it in the car when I drove. And he woke me up to a business savvy, because at the time I was, working in sales and sales coaching when I first heard him, like aimlessly making money, like literally aimlessly making money. And then the Eckhart Tolle came out when it was more spiritual. When you stop giving a shit about that stuff, that's when Eckhart Tolle walked into my life. And the Power of Now is insane. It's insanely how it's like it's the world's greatest starter book. Like it's like
I think. Yeah, no, totally. And just to emphasize that point, I think what he did was catalyze and make digestible sort of Eastern philosophy and mysticism in a Western vocabulary. I think that's why it was so successful.
And if you've got the audiobook, boy, does his voice sound so soothing. It just puts you right to sleep.
It is very soothing. It's almost yeah, it's crazy.
It's absolutely great. I'm actually going to dig up another book here as I talk and ramble, which I adored too, because it was simply a man talking about his connection to waking up. And there's you ask a lot of people are like, what's the first book that had you wake up? And so many people say Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl.
Yeah, I just read that.
But that one is brutal. The first 100 pages is almost impossible to get through. So just skip the first 100 pages, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway,
but just to comment on that, my takeaway, lots of people agree with you. It's like a seminal book, but it was excellent. But my biggest takeaway was, once you build a foundation of wholeness within you, and this comes back to awakening, and this is what I do with a lot of my clients actually, is that we're so, and this comes back to even the earlier conversation about being children and, trying to survive in this environment. You learn very quickly which behavior is acceptable and which behavior isn't. For example, if you have a creative impulse and you have lots of energy, you go to school as a child, you're told to sit down and shut up. And so that creative impulse, that spontaneity, that creativity gets squashed. And so we have this baked in idea that some of our behavior is not good enough. Right. And so that carries on with us.
That starts when you're 2.
Well, exactly. And that's the programming I'm talking about. And so we go through our life, we're constantly looking externally for validation, from teachers, from government, from, spouses, everything. We're looking externally for love, affection, all the things that we need on a fundamental level. But if you cultivate that within yourself, you come back to this childlike wholeness, innocence, light of, I am perfect the way I am. I've healed myself. I come back to that wholeness and I operate from that truth, that trust. Then nobody can fuck with you, because like you're saying earlier, anybody can attack you, hate mail, whatever it is. It just bounces off you, or you can just like, okay, that's them projecting their shit on me. It's not mine.
Yeah.
Right. And so once you've come back to that wholeness, you become unfuckable with. if that's a word.
I think so. I think it's even a book, for Christ's sakes. But that's 100% true. And it's when I said it starts at 2. You're dealing with your parents' fears. At 2 years old, you're moderately cognitive of what's going on, and they're saying things like, "Don't do that. Don't touch that. That's hot. Sit down. Don't
Exactly.
don't go by those stairs. Don't do this. Don't this. Don't that." Your whole life goes from "I want to check everything out" to "I shouldn't fucking do anything."
Yeah.
And it's
Or
all
else.
cerebral. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
cerebral and
Yeah.
self-conscious, right? And you also look at your parents as like an authority figure, and you always do. And all your parents are doing is handing down their unresolved childhood traumas on
Totally.
you.
And that's ancestral trauma.
Yeah. So when you're listening to your parents, I mean, I love my mother to pieces. And if you're listening to this, hi, Mom. But she just tells me these stories that I'm like, what the fuck? Why would anyone, you just have to do it this way? No, we're not going to do it that way. Right. And then I think back to my childhood. I'm like, how many times did I listen to this? And I'm like, well, why did we? But at the same time, your life is exactly as it was supposed to be to get
Yes.
you to wake up. You had to live through your pains. You had to live through your experience. There's an individual, Hans Wilhelm, who expressly says that we picked our group of friends, or our group of friends all got together. Picture yourself sitting outside of an N64 back in the day, and you're about to have a party, right? All 4 of you plug into the thing, and all 4 of you play your part in the game, and all 4 of you unplug and then go out to the bar or whatever it is, back in the 90s. That's what we've done right now. There's a huge theory that we've all plugged into this game. We're all sitting here playing our part. And then when we unplug, that's like death. We go to some other realm. We do something else.
We're just avatars in a simulation video game.
To me, going through globe Earth, flat Earth, hollow Earth, all these things that I looked at, the only one that really makes any sense is simulation.
Yeah.
And it's back upable. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
we believe that we live in a solid world. That's me knocking on a solid desk, except it's been scientifically proven now that when you break into the atom, you have quarks, and quasons. Inside the atom, the building block of society, the building block of matter is an atom. And inside the atom is energy. So the building block...
99% empty.
Yes, and 99% empty, and it's energy. So based on what they've seen with their own eye and what they've shared with us, we live in a holodeck. That's it. There's no question about it. That's how the world works. This is where we are, right? Yeah. So it's like once you kind of like grasp that, you don't have to believe it or know it or anything like that. You just have to sort of be there. Now, we are jumping all over the place. I did want to say one thing to anyone that's waking up, anyone that's getting going. There's a book called The End of Your World by Adyashanti. And it's this writer, he's just talking about what his awakening was like. And he said he's telling you a story. The book isn't very long. I've got it on Audible. It's an enjoyable piece that you can relate to, you can compare to, you can see sort of where you are versus where he is on your journey. Maybe he's a little bit more advanced, and maybe if you're like halfway through an awakening, there is no end to an awakening. I think the end to the awakening is when you turn into the glowing Mr. Burns from The Simpsons in the forest, and then you just disappear into space. I think once you have all the answers, I think that's when you're allowed to leave. I think that's what happens. So that's the awakening just keeps growing and growing and growing until you're out.
Interesting. Yeah. And well, there's also the danger. I just wanted to comment on that of, awakening becoming this another sort of ego trap. It's like as soon as we position ourselves like, oh, I'm more woke than you, or I'm more spiritual than you, or I'm more enlightened than you. That's a fundamental ego game. It's like it's an indication of lower development, not higher development. So I just wanted to mention that as, and you could call it spiritual bypassing or whatever you want to call it within this community, or the spiritual awakening community. There's so much of it present that it's just another ego trap. So it's just something to be aware of as we move through it. One of the other things I wanted to comment on is how you mentioned it's sort of pain as an evolutionary driver. Like the shit that happens in our life, the challenges that we have, the people that show up are all there to facilitate our growth, our evolution, our awakening. So if you can view it like this, and you can learn the lessons of everything that happens, like take, for example, relationships. If you are in relationships and you continue to have a similar relationship, either it's abusive or codependent, or there's lots of drama, there's fighting, whatever it is,
we all have that one friend, eh? We all have that one friend who's always got a different boyfriend, but it's the same guy.
Exactly the same archetype, right? But it's because they're not learning the lesson that archetype is there to teach them. And they're going to continue going around in that cycle until they learn that lesson. And if you don't learn the lesson, the stakes are going to be amplified. And so until, for example, in drinking, for me or for a lot of people, if you continue drinking and the messages are coming and you're not getting them, it's going to amplify until either you have a breakdown, you have hit rock bottom, you have a diagnosis, you have a tragedy, an accident, whatever it is, to shake you out. It's like you have to start listening to this. So pain is an evolutionary driver. So what if we could use our capacity to recognize the messages that are coming at us and to integrate them. And so we obsolete pain as being the evolutionary driver. We become now conscious agents interacting with our own evolution, right? Mm-hmm. That's a definition of awakening for me. It's like, okay, I am in control of my life. I am all energy and I get to direct that energy. And if my energy is going into something unconsciously like drama or bad relationships or alcohol, then it's getting drained in that direction. So if I take control by becoming aware of those unconscious beliefs, then now I can consciously engage in my evolution on an individual level. And then for me, why this is exciting, because then we can show up in community. We can have conversations like this, where we're both at a level, not, it's not like a pissing contest where I'm more woke than you. So no, let's connect in authentic conversation with the goal of synergizing higher truth. That's really what I'm doing with this podcast. And that's why it's so freaking exciting for me. I get to talk to guys like you and have these conversations. This is awesome.
Hey, are you feeling lost, frustrated, angry about the state of the world, but unsure what to do about it? I get it. The world is a pretty messed up place right now. Yet in these interesting times of shattered realities, many people are using alcohol to escape and numb their feelings of anxiety, dread, and uncertainty. I know, I did it for years. This is why I've made it my mission to support brave souls in mastering their inner world and finding a deeper sense of purpose. To that end, I created Reset 2020. Reset is a personal transformation mastermind group with the intention of resetting your relationship with alcohol and becoming the best version of yourself in an empowering, supportive online community. To check out more about Reset 2020 and to watch my masterclass video, head on over to go.patrickcooklife.com. Remember, Cook is spelled with an E, C-O-O-K-E. So it's go.patrickcooklife.com. All right, now back to the show.
Hey man, this is like, it is awesome, and I love your excitement for it. I mean, this is my everyday life. My podcast is
me too.
Is a very exciting time, and for my podcast, it's changed because I'm past 100 episodes now, and the funny thing is, I've slowed right down because I don't want to keep pushing, a message that is mine, is not mine. I've collected, as I've changed, I've collected new fans, along the way, and we're drawing about 13,000 people an episode. So
that's amazing, dude. Congratulations.
It's only 1 year, right? So when you have a keen message and when you keep growing, like for me, it just keeps growing, and I've kept trying to change and I've addressed the change. As we grow, like I'm not very much business oriented anymore. And especially with my coaching, you were talking about your coaching. With my coaching, I'm not even taking on, well, that's not true. I lie. I was going to say I'm not even taking on new clients, but I did just take one on last week. But I'm looking for specific people.
Yes.
I'm looking for energy, right? So wherein before you have to take on everybody and sort of hope things work, you have to take on everybody because you have to figure out what you want to do. And now we have sub coaches that we delegate a lot of coaching out to make it affordable for everybody. Everybody can have a piece, and everybody can work. And one thing that I've learned desperately is money is irrelevant. When it comes to what we think we need money for. Like, in other words, if you were to sign on with me, I don't need you. Like, I mean, it sounds arrogant and cocky. I don't need your money, but I need you to pay it to make it effective for you. Yeah, exactly. To make it effective for you. So when it comes to coaching, when it comes to enlightenment, you're going to get some negative people that are going to be like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to invest this money, or I'm not going to, buy into you. And if we're talking right now and there are coaches listening, never take that personally, because that person could be sitting there with a BMW in their driveway. And you say, my program's $5,000, and they would rather spend $5,000 on what sits in their driveway, what other people see of them to make themselves feel a certain way, as opposed to investing in their own self. And when they say no to you, they're doing you a favor. So don't stress that, ladies and gentlemen who are becoming coaches. Do not stress the rejections. Appreciate them. because what's meant for you will always be yours. And one thing that people never understood about me is why I have so many coaches on my show. They're like, aren't you a coach? Aren't you giving away your money? I'm like, no, man, I'm driving people to wherever they need to be to do whatever it is they need to do, because
Totally.
connectivity is huge, right?
Yeah. In the interest of higher truth, this is
100%.
why we're doing it in the first place. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we have this, you also mentioned earlier too, the collective consciousness. When we talk about the collective consciousness and having to fix collective past, it stems. It's a microcosm of it is Corona, right? The Corona mask argument is you have to wear a mask so that old people don't die. I'm like, well, fuck, nope. Old people are going to die anyway,
Yeah.
and sorry if that offends people, or if that was news. Old people die, right? And they don't do well with the flu, and they haven't done well with the flu historically, and the flu has a vaccine. Now this whole mask thing is it's got nothing to do with anything other than pre-programming, which is what you talked about with regards to the collective awareness. If everybody wears a mask, then none of us can breathe, first of all. But the problem is, we're wearing the masks to help other people, and that is what society is ingraining in us, and it's also a trap. It's something that we have to overcome and overgrow. The bottom line is this: if I'm responsible for your health by me wearing a mask for you, then I should be responsible for everything else. I should be able to walk into your liquor cabinet and smash it, empty it out, slap the McDonald's out of your hand, go into your kitchen and replace all your garbage with celery and shit. But I'm not responsible for your health. That's just virtue signaling. So collectively, when each and every one of us decide to take action for ourselves, when we take care of ourselves, if every single person on this planet decided to take care of themselves, everybody would be taken care of. But we have this grandiose, virtuose system installed in our brains that say we must take care of other people. Well, who the fuck are the other people taking care of? If I'm taking care of you, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's self-love at its base level is you need to take care of yourself. You need to fill your own cup first before
what is that?
you can.
Everybody thinks that that's selfish. We've been taught that if you take care of yourself, you're selfish. You've been brainwashed into believing that.
That's a program, 100%. Yeah. I wanted to come back to like what you said about Corona, and this is an interesting theory that sort of played into what I just said about pain as an evolutionary driver. What if coronavirus is a collective pain evolutionary driver? It's like, okay, you guys aren't getting it. Shit is going down. You're killing yourselves. You're killing the planet. There's polarization. There's no synergy. You've fallen out of symbiosis with the environment. Okay, here's something to wake you the fuck up. Coronavirus. Here it is. How do you respond to this? And it's amplifying everything that has already been present, which unfortunately is a shit show. It's people polarized. It's people triggered. It's people falling into ego. It's all the drama and the shaming and that we're seeing online, the cultural narrative warfare. And so within that context, and another reason why I started the show is like, okay, we can, talk about this all day. We can pontificate. We can, have these higher level abstract concepts and conversations. What can we do as individuals? Like, let's give actionable intel, practical advice for people on the ground in the middle of their shitstorm life right now. What can I do? And I think we've touched on a bunch of things you can do, but, within this context, loving yourself, number one, healing your shit, becoming aware of your emotional trauma and your triggers, showing up in relationships, even with your family, with your spouse, with your girlfriend, with your kids. How can you show up more powerfully in those conversations, those interactions, and then extend that out, ripple that out into your online conversations? We have to start taking responsibility for ourselves and then ripple that out into the world.
It's what you just said though goes against everything that we've ever been taught. And the funny thing about that is, when you do wake up to it, you're going to start looking at certain things. Now, here's a weird thing that may not agree with everybody. And it's something that I've had to really address myself, because I've done a lot of quote unquote shadow work, which is a whole other episode. But when it comes down to good versus evil, it basically what it is what I personally want versus what I personally don't want. You know,
Mm.
and I tell the story of the Yulin Dog Festival. Right, Americans went nuts over this Yulin Dog Festival. They're signing petitions. Don't eat the dogs. You're all fucking brutal, right? And then everybody had an opinion. Everybody had an opinion on this Yulin Dog Festival. I, for one, don't want to see animal cruelty. I don't want to kill dogs. I don't want to eat dogs. If I was stuck in the middle of nowhere and I had to eat something, it would probably be my dog. I mean, assuming I was out of other food, of course. I wouldn't just go straight for the dog.
Of course.
But here's the thing. Here's the arrogance. America's over here going, fuck your dog festival. You people are stupid, belligerent, gross, disgusting. Right? And then people will say, well, it wasn't so much about that they ate them. It was about the cruelty that they put them through. Right? And all of that applies to what I'm about to say. Imagine India, who outranks us with people. Right? Imagine they're over there going, you bastards are eating our god deity, the cow. Right?
Mm.
And people are like, well, we're not as cruel to the cow. Oh, we aren't? Just take a look at any goddamn dairy farm. First of all, if you're drinking milk, you're insane. Secondly, this and that's not me being better than you. That's just look into the dairy industry. And the fact that we've been brainwashed to consume milk, which is taking the calcium out of our bones, which is why so many people are on bone density medication right now, because their whole lives they've been drinking milk. Oh God, I could go on forever. Anyway, it's a perspective. Back to perspective. Don't kill the dogs. Don't eat the dogs. Sign the petition. Make them stop the arrogance of the Americans, the arrogance of this part of the world. While we're saying, and we're spitting food out of our mouths, we're spitting God deity out of our mouths by saying, over our burger, don't eat dogs, right? And we're eating sacred cows. Indians are going nuts. What the hell are you people doing? So now on both hands, eating dogs isn't a big deal. Eating cows isn't a big deal. All this stuff. I say these things, and what I mean is everyone's got their personal opinions. I would never eat a dog. I have no interest in eating a dog, but that's because of how I was raised. That's because of my personal experience. And we want to push this personal experience on other people. I want to force my personal experience on you. Let's break it down more simple. You and I go to a baseball game, and I use this analogy all the time. I'm a Mets fan. You're a Jays fan. We watch the game. We're sitting in the exact same seats. We both get a hot dog. Everything is identical. We're wearing the same outfits. We hold hands. We're the craziest people of all time. Right? Jays win, Mets lose. You're stoked. I'm pissed. Nothing changed other than my upbringing versus your upbringing. And now throw alcohol in the mix and two people are fighting because the Jays won and the Mets lost. Right? Fighting, fisticuffs. So we have these experiences, and we can, in our minds, anyone listening to this show and anyone thinking about this stuff, in your mind, you have only ever had the ability to observe. And everything that's ever happened to you is an observation. Anything that you've ever seen anywhere is a story you were told, is a picture you were shown. You are the center of the universe. And every single thing happens for you to observe. Create a story and live that story. So when it comes down to who we want to be and what we want to say and all the people that could be saying this and doing that, it doesn't matter. There are victims everywhere. And the good and the bad don't merge. There is no real definition of good and bad, right? If you don't know who I am and you're faced with a proposition, let's go way out there. You're faced with a proposition where you have to kill my sister to save your entire family. And you've got 4 brothers and sisters. You've got 8 grandparents. You've got 42 kids, but you have to kill my sister. You've never met her. You don't know who she is. So to save everyone that it's so important to you, you kill my sister. And for the rest of my natural life, I know you as the murderer of my sister. And you are known as the savior of your entire bloodline. Good, bad, right? Who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong. And then there'll be people virtue signaling, I wouldn't kill your sister. I'd let my entire family die. No, you wouldn't, right? And even if you would, even if you would, that's insane. Why would you let your whole family die? Why would you kill anybody? Why would you be in the situation? All these hypotheticals and all these things and all this stuff that we can go in. The bottom line is when you start living in the question instead of the answer, you understand that there's only things for you to perceive. There isn't anything for you to get riled up over. There isn't anything for you to plant your flag in. You're literally here observing. You're observing, you're thinking, you're equating, you're making the best of the time that you have to do the best that you can, but to get riled up, to get focused on something that is I'm not saying don't live without purpose. I'm saying be as fluid as the world in which you live, because you could lock yourself in. You could hitch yourself to a wagon that falls off a cliff 10 years from now. Oops.
I love what you said about perspective, and I think that's worth unpacking a bit, because it's super important for people to understand that the lens with which they view the world is as important as what they're viewing. It's because you are going to perceive whatever's happening in your external world through the lens that has been programmed into you. So your job is to become aware of the lens that you're looking through, as much as it is to discern the information that's coming in. And so what that means is become aware of your cultural upbringing, your programming, your cognitive biases. Like, what are your belief systems? What are you prone to believe more than other things? Because it's going to skew how you process any information, any new people, anything. And so in order to make sense of this world, which is increasingly complex, which is increasingly polarized, we need to first become aware of, okay, how are we seeing the world? Through what lens are we seeing the world? And do that inner work. You mentioned shadow work, which is super important. And yes, we should do an entire show on shadow work. We'll get back to that. But basically, shadow work is becoming aware of your repressed identity, your repressed emotions, the shit that's happening under the surface that's controlling you still, and triggering you into reactivity, emotional reactivity mostly. And so the lens that with which we see the world is super important to understanding the world. And so if we can all sort of, remove as many layers and come to a clear lens as possible, then we will come closer to reality as it really is, rather than how we perceive it.
Also, the closer we get to reality as it really is, the further it gets away from us.
Totally, man. And then this is the fundamental question is, like, the more we know, the less we discover that we don't know. Right. So the more I expand and grow and learn, the more of the landscape of what I don't know expands. And so it's faster than I can learn. Right. And so it's an orientation, really, in order for me not to just like, okay, well, I'm learning as fast as I can, and it's still not enough to make sense of reality. Like, why wouldn't I just go get drunk or put a gun in my mouth or just check out, But the answer is, the more I learn, the more I expand, I can be in that betterment of myself, which is the fundamental impulse of evolution, is just to be better than you were yesterday, better than yourself, be the best version of yourself, not be better than the next guy, and that's how that evolutionary impulse shows up in capitalism. It's competition, but it's really, you just need to be better than you were yesterday, right?
You're only ever in competition with yourself. The rest of the world doesn't matter. The minute
exactly.
The minute you shake off the idea of competition with anybody else, the minute you realize there's enough for everyone, that's called
totally.
That's called going from living in scarcity to living in abundance.
Totally. Let's talk about that for a second, because that's practical information for people to live by. What's a scarcity mindset?
A scarcity mindset, based on the conversations that we've had on this in this particular podcast, would be me not promoting other coaches on my coaching podcast.
Right, exactly.
Because I don't want them to get the money that I might have gotten, right?
Yeah,
but
totally.
In doing so, instead of having that scarcity mindset, you've got the abundance mindset. I pass off somebody who's not quite at my level or whatever. And people are like, what does that mean, not at your level as a coach? Well, if you think about high school or school in general, you can't take somebody who's in grade 4 and just drop them into a grade 12 class. Everybody in life is at a different place and a different stage. And people think coaching is simply following a set of systems or whatever to get you to where you need to be. The reality is, no, that's not the case at all. So the abundance mindset is there's enough work to go around. There's enough. Everybody needs something. So I was talking about grade 12. You can't drop a grade 4 into a grade 12 and expect them to do the work. Every coach everywhere is on a level that you need to connect with. Every message, for the most part, all of our messages are the same when you're looking for in a certain genre of coaching. It's who you resonate with the best. So when you have an abundance mindset towards this as a coach, you want everyone to find the right coach for them. And if I'm the right coach for you, you're going to come to me. Even if I'm sending you to everybody else, you're going to be like, I'm going to go check out that guy instead. And, there's a lot of people that do resonate with me. And I push a crazier narrative. I'm a much more aggressive coach as well, because I come from utter darkness. And that's a huge thing. I lived the life. I lived certain things. Like there's a meme floating around that I absolutely adore. It's like, when somebody tries to push your buttons and they don't realize that you were Thug Life before you were the the light pusher, and it's SpongeBob, right? That's the funny thing about it. Try me, bitch.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like when you wake up to that, when you wake into that, you don't have to worry about scarcity and abundance mindset. You become aware of a scarcity and abundance mindset, and then it doesn't matter anymore because you're living in abundance. When you become aware of abundance, the funny thing about this is everyone's like, I have to earn abundance. You have to work hard for abundance. The reality is abundance is all around you. Abundance is absolutely everywhere. We have cluttered abundance up with lies, bullshit, junk, and rhetoric. And once you clear that out of the way, you're now living again in abundance. But it's always been there. It's the limitations that you've created yourself.
Totally. It's a mindset, really. It's an orientation towards, okay, if I can orient toward, and abundance doesn't mean just money or resources. You could be abundant in gratitude or joy or presence, And if you orient towards those things, like, holy shit, I am super abundant. I have clean water to drink. That's fucking abundant, And if you start to orient in that direction and remove that scarcity competitive mindset, then everything starts to appear abundant.
Yeah, and people can say, "Oh, it's so easy for you to say that. You've got this, you've got that. You've got your rent paid and all that sort of stuff." Well, I'll tell you this. I never had any of that. Even when I was a high-powered sales coach, I was always late on my rent checks. I was always late on this because there was a huge party to be had. There was a lack of care. I did not give a shit. I was not living in abundance. I was living in scarcity. I said, I'm going to, it doesn't matter how much I make. I'm going to spend it so that I can spend it, so that I don't lose it, so that somebody doesn't take it from me. Who the fuck is taking it from anyone, And that's the thing. But this is the abundance versus scarcity. So no matter how much money you make, if you're not living in abundance, money's pointless because you're just wasting it on dumb shit. You can have 40,000 pairs of shoes and a cocaine habit.
Totally.
Not that I'm talking about anything personal. Exactly. Exactly. So when you start living in abundance, that's when things start to make sense. That's when you start stockpiling your rent. That's when you start to change things around. That's when life opens up. It's not the other way around.
And that's when the appropriate mentor or teacher or coach appears, because you have become ready. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right?
Yes, in this sense. And there's a lot of cliched shit that we talk about, all over the place. But it's funny how all the cliches become so real when you wake into it.
They're cliches for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, you can say to yourself, well, I don't want a coach. I don't need a coach. I don't want this. I don't want that. Your entire life, you've had a coach. It could be that guy at the end of the bar that tells you stories. It could be the desire to have more money because you saw it on MTV Cribs. These are the people coaching you. Your influences are your coaches. Now, when you have an influence that has your best interest at heart, follow them. Everybody listen to this podcast right now. Go sign up with Patrick for coaching. Bottom line.
Well, find a coach that aligns with you, I think, is more accurate. And when I first sort of ventured into the idea of being a life coach, I was so vehemently opposed to it. Just like the term life coach, just oh my God, just drove me nuts.
I'm a life coach. Are you? You pretentious prick? Are you? That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
But I can say without a doubt that being vulnerable to say, okay, I'm going to invest in myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put the money down and I'm going to do this because I resonate deeply with this coach or this mentor, and I'm committed to getting a result. As soon as I did that, as soon as I invested in myself, and I've done this repeatedly, and I continue to work with coaches myself, because it's the most rewarding experience, the most rapid expansion, because you're held accountable, you're shown your blind spots. There's so many benefits to coaching that you might be able to get them on your own. You might be able to find these realizations, but it may take you 10 years. It might take you 20 years. It might take you 3 lifetimes, but if you can find somebody that you align with, that you have the right energetic connection with, and really drop into them, that container that's created of vulnerability and trust and integrity, there is magic in that. And that's why coaching is so powerful, but it has to be aligned. Like you were saying earlier, it has to be the right fit. And when it is the right fit, it's magical. for both parties.
Oh,
For
yeah.
me, I love that experience when a client, I'm holding space for a client and they have a moment, a realization. It's like, holy shit, I am powerful. I am in control. I am, the creator of my own reality. That is like a moment that is so rewarding for me as a coach.
I want to touch on that for a quick second. When they do make the realization that I am the creator of their own reality, it's funny because that has a trickle-down effect. That's a shatterer. And then it allows you to parlay back into other parts and other aspects of your life. The funny thing about that is, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't made that realization yet, understand that you are living the life that you created 100%. Whether you believe it or not, you're living
And that's
it.
what I mean by
You're
taking
living
responsibility.
it.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, I don't have any I didn't have anything to do with blah, blah, blah. Maybe you didn't, but you have everything to do with how you reacted to it. And then that's what created your future. Everything that you ever did, every single one of your physical and mental decisions in your past led you to right now, which means you are 100% in control of what you've done. So if you want more, do more. If you want to be more, think more. If you want to have more, be more open-minded. Expand, change, grow. Push yourself. Always push yourself. Always. Bottom line. And I'm addressing the audience directly now, ladies and gentlemen. Get out there and push something.
So this is so awesome, dude. We could talk for days and days. I want to be cognizant of your time, so I'll just ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
And again, like I want to keep coming back to, so like, what are some practical steps people can take? What are some actionable intel that we can, transmit? And so to that end, like, what is it, the world is changing so fast right now that, people are so ungrounded, uncertain. They're living in fear. They don't know what's coming next. And so what are some tools, like what are some of the skills we should be focusing on and developing now that will be useful for this new reality, whatever it may be?
Well, the fun thing about that is, we talk about people that are living in fear and living in, the world changing. Again, everything happens for us to observe. We create the change we need to see to become the person we need to become. So, you yourself are the curator of this change. We're playing in the curation. So, like I said back in the baseball story, you and I can have witnessed the exact same event and live two completely different stories. Your team won, my team lost. In this event, everything that's happening is now happening and was always going to happen. What makes it different, or what makes us aware or unaware, is our story, the story that we tell ourselves. So even though it's the exact same sandbox, it's the exact same game, it's the exact same essence that we're all living in, every last one of us has a different story to it. Like Jeff Bezos, for example, is loving the Amazon explosion, and all the box stores like the Walmarts and all the big stores are super happy that COVID only affects mom and pop shops. It doesn't affect the big box stores. There's no COVID in the big box stores, only in the smaller middle class stores. That's where the COVID hides out. Barbershops, restaurants, bars, all that sort of stuff. Your corner grocery store, lots of COVID in there. None of it is in the big box stores. And that's weird, isn't it? But hey, we don't ask questions, and people that do ask questions, you're taught to shun them. So how do you prepare for the world that's coming? Well, first of all, you created, ladies and gentlemen, you created the world that's coming. This is your creation. You created this to learn the lessons that you need to learn to become the person that you're going to become. And then once you've become that person, there are going to be more lessons that you need to learn to become the person you're going to become from there. There is no stopping. There is no grand success, and failure is merely a pit stop on the way to success. Once you hit your successes, the first thing that happens after you're extremely successful and you make all of your goals is Tuesday morning. So it just keeps going. There's nothing other than perpetual motion. So as you learn and grow and become accustomed to, you can sit back and go, oh, I hate that I can't go out in public, or I hate that I've got this, or I hate that I've got that. You can say all these things to yourself, or you can accept the fact that these are these circumstances that we have. The reason you hate them is because they're different than what they were. But at the same time, you didn't like what was going on before either. You didn't like being paycheck to paycheck. You didn't like having to struggle. You didn't like any of this stuff, and you blamed everybody. Maybe not you listening right now, but maybe you listening right now. So when you realize that there's nobody to blame and there's nothing going on that not all of us are dealing with, right? This is a time for you to become more aware. If you're not happy with where you are, if you're not happy with what you're doing, step up, learn, embrace more, do more, achieve more, take more knowledge and more information in. Those people, those shills that I was telling you about that, that run their mouths and they shoot negativity. These people, for a positive account, such as myself, such as yourself, you're probably going to get some haters too. And they're not hating you. They're just hating life and spreading that hate so that other people have hate. Hell, I shut comments off on my Instagram, instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Toot, toot. I've shut comments off because I don't give a shit what people say to me, but I don't need other people that come for motivation to read stuff and be like, oh, this is so great. This is so great. And then somebody runs their mouth about some bullshit. And then a weaker person might be like, oh, well, now I feel bad again, right? Because some asshole decided they were going to run their mouths. Ego talks loudest. The loudest person in the room often knows sweet fuck all. So you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Another thing I would say, 100%, I absolutely adore. I've lived by this sentence for 1,000 years. It's actually 2 sentences. Don't trust anybody with shitty shoes, and never go to somebody for advice that you would never take criticism from somebody that you would never go to for advice. And these are major components inside your life because it is up to you. You are living your experience, regardless of who I am, regardless of what I've done, what Patrick's done, what we're talking about. You are amalgamating all of this information into your life experience. So understand that you're the one that's in control of your life experience. You're the one that is embracing all of this. You're the one that is internalizing all of this, and you're the one that has to make your decisions for you. You are in control. You are 100% in control. Even when you say I'm not in control, that's you actively giving your control away, being like, I don't want to have this. People will say, well, I can't break up with this guy. I can't leave this house. I can't do that. And they tell themselves a story. When the opposite story becomes more predominant in your mind, you take action. So what's going to happen is you're going to suffer until you can't suffer anymore. Then you're going to leave, instead of just getting up and leaving in the first place and being done with it. So how do you prepare for what's coming? Embrace it. Accept that we are living in a fluid time and that it's up to you to change and adapt as you grow and to appreciate the experience, because we are all here simply to experience, one way or the other.
Wow, man. Fantastic. So much insight and knowledge and wisdom there. One thing I just wanted to comment on is that you talk a lot about taking responsibility for your own shit and how it is creating this world. And so a lot of people that I speak to, they feel overwhelmed by that idea. It's like, I'm responsible for coronavirus or the children or all these atrocities in the world. And, they get overwhelmed. And I certainly got overwhelmed. And when I got overwhelmed, I used to just go get drunk because I couldn't handle it. But just understanding that what we do as individuals creates the family, creates the society, creates the culture, creates the collective that allows for this type of evil to proliferate. So even though there isn't a direct correlation in our minds that I'm responsible for all this bad, horrible stuff going on in the world, you are responsible.
I'd say it differently than that. Because you're aware of the suffering, and you're aware of the pain, and you're aware of the kids, and you're aware of this stuff. And because you're aware of it, it's changing you, and it's making you adapt. It's making you do different things. But there are people out there that have never even heard of Hollywood, that don't give a shit about Hollywood, that don't have this particular and current pain in their ethos. So they're playing in the sandbox, but they're playing an entirely different game in the sandbox. But they're all here, right? So the fact that people are like, well, I created this, you created the awareness. And now that you're aware, you're going to do something about it. It is the pain that causes you to change, even though it seems to be external. It's like you can talk about. So the thing that we talked about on this show is you and I talked about everything we know. We didn't mention a single thing that we don't know anything about, that we've never even studied. We've never mentioned a single thing that didn't do anything, that we don't know, that we can't talk about things we don't know. So what we can do is talk about our experience, talk about what we do know. And for somebody to walk in, for you and I to talk back and forth about this, and then to be addressed by somebody who knows nothing, or nothing about what we're talking about, but everything about what we don't know about, they seem crazy to us. But their experiences in life gave them that sort of thing. Like, imagine being Admiral Byrd. Imagine being the guy that saw the extra land on the other side of Antarctica. Sounds crazy to us because the whole lie was all there. But that's the thing. When people say, I didn't create the children. I didn't create the pain. You're aware of it, which means you did create it. Now, you didn't hurt children, right? But you needed to become aware of it because this is a story that's in your life. There are people that are completely oblivious to what's happening in Hollywood because it doesn't play into their life story, right? But it's happening. But only what we're aware of is what affects us and what creates our individual aligned realities. And that's huge because there's so many. There's one of the things that I like to mention is imagine we're living in a realm where we have 100, just arbitrarily 100 things that we can talk about, 100 topics that we're allowed to speak on, or that exist, 100 topics that exist. Now, the world that we live in currently at this moment in time, 97 of those topics have been removed. We're left with 3 topics. We have 3 things to talk about. And we've been taught to talk about these 3 things. And we've been taught that there are a million opinions to have on these 3 things. And these are the 3 things that we're allowed to talk about. So our reality is reduced to 3 items out of 100 that we're allowed to talk about, which means we can only speak from our experience, which means we can only speak from the knowledge that we have. Now, the further you go into the rabbit holes, the more you start unlocking these other topics that you can speak on. The more you unlock these other topics, the more you are able to apply that knowledge to the 3 topics that we've had. And the crazier you sound to the people that are only talking about the 3 topics with the 3 topics of knowledge that they have. So expansion, awakening, awareness, we've been locked out of who we truly are, of what we truly are, of what's really going on, of where we truly are. We've been locked out of it. And if you speak on that, you're crazy because the world doesn't know what you're talking about. But the truth is out there. The truth, X-Files. The truth is out there, man. And that's the thing. Once we start unlocking these other topics, more reality. Levitation is a thing. How do you think the pyramids got built? They got vibrated over, or they were built with giants. There's rumor that the Grand Canyon is a graveyard for the Nephilim, is a graveyard for giants. You know, there's giants that are found in the caves of Afghanistan. Who are these giants? Where'd they come from? Right? All this stuff exists, but if you talk about it, you're crazy because they told you were crazy. And anyone that goes against the cognitive narrative is crazy, is a conspiracy theorist. Anyone that thinks outside of what they've been told they're allowed to think about is told they're crazy. So when you open up your mind to the ability to do more, anyone that's filled with anxiety or filled with depression or is an alcoholic or has addiction, you've been tricked. You've been tricked into having these things, right? The minute you start giving yourself the information, the minute I understood my anxiety, it went away. I wasn't on meds. I didn't need a doctor. I didn't need any of this stuff. I just shattered the story that was initially given to me. Ladies and gentlemen, people would rather have a leaky anus than do any other shadow work. And that's a huge thing. How many times have you seen on the fucking pills, anal discharge is a side effect, and in some severe cases, it may cause death, right? I'd rather have a leaky anus and die than look inside myself. This is what the world's telling us to do.
Because it hurts, man. It's uncomfortable. I drank a hole into my stomach. That's how bad it had to get before I stopped. Mm-hmm. So this is just so fantastic, dude. We could talk all day, and I'm definitely going to have you back on, but I think this might be a good place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your insight, your knowledge, your wisdom. I love your energy. I love connecting with you. Like, these conversations are literally changing the world. So thank you for showing up the way you do. Tell people where they can find you if they want to get in touch or hire you for coaching.
Yeah, I am. My entire team, you can find us at thementalmasteryalliance.com. There's linked outs to everything else that goes on there. Social media, Instagram.com/thementalmasteryalliance, Instagram.com/becomethefree. We're working on it. We're working on it one person at a time. But primarily, the best thing that you can do for me is work on yourself. And the best thing that I can do for you is work on myself.
Amen, brother. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. We'll talk to you real soon.
You bet.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please do hit the subscribe button and share this episode with all your friends. And for more episodes and show notes, head on over to being-podcast.com. We'll see you next time. And remember, live your being.